The massive Zephyrian battleship Eternal Dawn shuddered as another plasma blast tore through its shields. Admiral Veltar gripped the command rail, watching his fleet die around him. 12 dreadnoughts had become 8. 8 had become 4. Now only his flagship and 2 escort vessels remained of what was once the most powerful armada in the Coalition's history. "Sir, the Star's Edge is breaking apart," his tactical officer shouted over the alarms. Through the viewport, Veltar watched the heavy cruiser split in half, its reactor core painting space with brilliant blue fire. 3,000 souls aboard that ship. 3,000 more added to the millions already lost to the Void Hunters. The enemy moved like a plague across the battlefield. Sleek black shapes that absorbed light itself, their hulls rippling with energy that seemed to bend reality around them. They didn't just destroy ships, they consumed them, breaking down matter at the molecular level and adding it to their ever-growing fleet. What had started as a few dozen scout vessels 3 months ago had become thousands upon thousands of death machines. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the surface of Zephyr Prime," the communications officer announced, her voice cracking. It's Commander Yildok." Veltar's heart sank. Yildok commanded the planetary defense grid. If he was calling, it meant the ground forces were finished. "Put him through." The holographic image of his old friend materialized, blood running down the left side of his scaled face. Behind him, explosions lit up the sky. "Veltar, the cities are gone. New Korath, the crystal spires, even the underground shelters. They're not just killing us, they're harvesting everything. The trees, the oceans, even the soil itself." "How long do you have?" Veltar asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Hours, maybe less. They're building some kind of extraction device in what used to be the capital. It's pulling apart the planet's core." Yildok's image flickered as another explosion rocked his position. "Send the beacon, old friend. Send it to everyone. Someone has to survive to remember us." The transmission cut to static. Veltar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 7 civilizations on his shoulders. The Zephyrians, the peaceful Altarians, the warrior clans of Velthos, the scholarly keepers of ancient wisdom, all of them looking to him for salvation he couldn't provide. "Prepare the emergency beacon," he ordered quietly. "Full spectrum, maximum power. Offer everything we have, our quantum drive technology, our genetic archives, the sacred fusion crystals of Altair, even the location of the hidden vaults." His science officer looked shocked. "Sir, those secrets have been guarded for 10,000 years. Some of that knowledge could destroy entire star systems if misused." "Better someone misuses it than it dies with us," Veltar replied. "Begin transmission." The beacon burst outward at faster than light speed, carrying the Coalition's desperate cry for help to every corner of known space. It reached the mighty hegemony worlds within hours, their massive industrial complexes and billion-ship armadas. It found the mysterious ethereal collective, beings of pure energy who commanded forces beyond understanding. It touched the edges of space controlled by the Ancient Ones, civilizations so old they remembered the birth of stars. For 3 days, only silence answered. The hegemony's response came first, Coalition request acknowledged. Current threat level assessed as uncontainable. Hegemony forces will not engage. Recommend immediate evacuation to designated refugee sectors. The ethereals were more direct. Your flesh constructs interest us not. Seek salvation elsewhere. Even the trading guilds, who would normally sell weapons to both sides of any conflict, simply marked Coalition space as a quarantine zone. On the 3rd day, as the last escort vessel exploded and Void Hunter machines began attaching themselves to the Eternal Dawn's hull, something unexpected happened. "Sir," the communications officer shouted, her voice filled with confusion rather than despair. "Incoming transmission from... I don't understand this. Grid Sector 7742, Outer Rim Territories. It's from Earth?" "Off." Veltar searched his memory. "The mammalian world? The ones who barely learned to leave their own solar system?" "Yes, sir. The humans. They're responding to our beacon." The message was short and simple, transmitted in slightly accented Galactic Standard. Message received. "Help is coming. Stand by. Terran Defense Force, Commander Park Jimin." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of Void Hunter cutting tools working on the outer hull. Every officer stared at the communication display in disbelief. "Sir," the tactical officer whispered, "their entire species only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 standard cycles ago. Their military consists of maybe a few hundred ships, mostly converted cargo haulers and mining vessels." Veltar felt something he hadn't experienced in months, a spark of hope, even though logic told him it was foolish. Signal acknowledgement, he ordered. And, prepare for emergency jump. If they're really coming, we should try to stay alive long enough to meet them. As the Eternal Dawn engaged its damaged hyperdrive and limped away from the advancing Void Hunter swarm, Veltar wondered what desperate madness had possessed the humans to answer their call. In a galaxy where mighty empires feared to act, why would the youngest and weakest species volunteer for certain death? He would learn the answer soon enough, though he suspected he might not like what he discovered about humanity's true nature. The crystal walls of the Altarian Parliament building hummed with nervous energy as Ambassador Korath received the urgent transmission from the Outer Rim. His 4 eyes widened in horror as he read the simple message that had answered the Zephyrian distress call. No, 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 he whispered, his translucent fingers trembling as he activated the emergency communication array. They don't know what they've done. Within minutes, he had established contact with the Zephyrian High Council. Admiral Veltar's tired face appeared on the holographic display, still bearing the scars of his recent escape from the Void Hunters. Ambassador Korath, Veltar greeted him wearily. I assume you're calling about our human allies. We're grateful for any. Stop. Korath interrupted, his voice crackling with panic. Admiral, you have made a terrible mistake. You think you've called for help, but you've summoned something far worse than the Void Hunters. Veltar's expression hardened. Worse than machines that consume entire worlds? Ambassador, with respect, humans are barely a spacefaring species. Their entire military couldn't match a single coalition patrol squadron. That's what they want you to think, Korath said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Listen to me carefully. 3 cycles ago, the Proxima 7 system was under siege. The Velthak Empire had surrounded the planet with 2,000 warships. The defenders held out for 3 years, but they were dying slowly. Then human military advisors arrived. I remember hearing about that conflict, Veltar nodded. It ended suddenly. In 6 hours, Korath emphasized. The Velthak had maintained a perfect blockade for 3 years. Then a single human transport ship requested permission to dock with the enemy flagship. The Velthak commander was curious, so he allowed it. 6 hours later, the entire siege fleet jumped away and never returned. The humans said they had negotiated a peaceful resolution. Veltar frowned. That could have been legitimate diplomacy. Could it? Korath's image leaned forward. Then explain the hegemony wars. 4 to 7 star systems locked in brutal combat for 8 years. Millions dead, entire planets reduced to ash. The war seemed endless until a human diplomat named Li Minho requested a meeting with the enemy high command. And? He went alone, Admiral. One human in a small shuttle, landing on a dreadnought surrounded by 1,000 enemy ships. 3 hours later, he walked out with a complete surrender treaty. The war ended that day. When reporters asked how he convinced them, he just smiled and said it was basic human psychology. Veltar shifted uncomfortably. These could be coincidences, Ambassador. Perhaps humans are skilled negotiators. Korath activated another display, showing shipping records and incident reports. 2 years ago, the Kessler Nebula was controlled by the Red Fang pirates. They had blocked all trade routes through that sector for 5 years. No military force could break their stranglehold because they knew every hiding spot in the nebula. I remember the Red Fang, Veltar said quietly. Vicious killers who showed no mercy. A human cargo ship called the Wanderer commanded by Captain Kim Taehyung, entered the nebula carrying what they claimed were medical supplies. The pirates, as expected, moved to intercept and board the vessel. What happened? Captain Kim broadcast something on all communication frequencies. We don't know what he said because every recording device in the area mysteriously malfunctioned. But the pirates, they fled, Admiral. All of them. They abandoned their bases, their treasure, everything. The Red Fang completely disappeared from that sector within hours. Veltar leaned back in his chair, a chill running down his spine. What could one human say to frighten pirates who had terrorized shipping lanes for years? That's not the strangest part, Korath continued. 3 months later, we found the Red Fang fleet on the other side of the galaxy. They had settled on a small planet and were farming. When investigators asked why they changed from piracy to agriculture, their leader would only say, "The humans showed us what we really were." The display shifted to show linguistic databases from across the galaxy. Admiral, do you know how the Universal Translator handles the human phrase diplomatic immunity? It means protection for ambassadors, doesn't it? Not anymore. Every major species in the galaxy has updated their translation matrices. When a human claims diplomatic immunity, the current translation in most languages is "run while you still can." The phrase has become a warning, not a protection. Veltar stared at the data, his mind racing. But they're such a young species. They've only had space travel for 50 cycles. That's what makes them so dangerous, Korath said grimly. They learn to travel between stars in 50 cycles, Admiral. Most species take thousands of years to develop that technology. They skipped entire evolutionary phases that teach civilizations restraint and caution. You're suggesting they're naturally violent. I'm suggesting they're naturally effective, Korath corrected. There are rumors, Admiral. Whispers in the diplomatic corps. They say humans don't fight wars the way other species do. They don't seek victory through superior numbers or better weapons. They win by understanding their enemies better than their enemies understand themselves. Veltar felt a cold realization settling over him. Ambassador, are you telling me we've called monsters to fight monsters? I'm telling you, Korath said quietly, that when the humans arrive, you need to be very careful about which side of them you end up on. Because the galaxy is about to learn why some species are born to explore the stars, and others are born to rule them. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar alone with a growing sense of dread about what was coming to save them. The space around Zephyr Prime had been empty for hours, filled only with the wreckage of destroyed Coalition ships and the ominous presence of Void Hunter scouts patrolling the system's edge. Then, without warning, reality seemed to bend and twist as 12 dark shapes emerged from hyperspace. Admiral Veltar stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, watching the sensor readings with growing confusion. The human ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Their hulls were perfect black, absorbing all light that touched them. They moved in formation, but it was wrong somehow, too precise, too coordinated, as if they shared a single mind. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, I'm getting strange readings from those vessels. Their energy signatures they're not following known physics. What do you mean? The power output suggests they should be much larger than they appear. And their weapons? I can't identify half of these systems. They're using technology that doesn't exist in any Coalition database. Before Veltar could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission. Sir, the human commander is requesting permission to board. Tell them we'll arrange a shuttle. Sir, he's not asking for a shuttle. He says he's coming aboard now. The air in the center of the bridge began to shimmer and twist. Veltar stepped back, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm, as two human figures materialized out of nothing. The teleportation technology was smooth, silent, and terrifying in its implications. Commander Park Jimin stood calmly in the center of the bridge, his dark uniform bearing no insignia that Veltar could recognize. He was younger than the Admiral had expected, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Beside him was a woman who made the veteran officers take unconscious steps backward. Major Choi Yuna was small by human standards, but something about her presence filled the bridge with tension. Her dark eyes moved across each alien officer with the calculating stare of a predator evaluating prey. When she smiled slightly, the translator units made confused static sounds, as if they couldn't process the emotion behind her expression. Admiral Veltar, Jimin said, his voice carrying no accent despite speaking perfect galactic standard. We received your distress call. We're here to resolve your Void Hunter problem. Veltar tried to maintain his composure, though his 4 hearts were beating rapidly. Commander, we're grateful for your response, but I must be honest. We're facing an enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations. The Void Hunters have tens of thousands of ships, and they've consumed 12 star systems already. He gestured to the tactical display, where red dots showed the massive enemy fleet positions. You have 12 ships. With respect, I don't understand how. 12 ships, Major Choi interrupted, her voice carrying a chill that made several officers shiver despite the controlled bridge temperature. The translator struggled with her tone, producing strange harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the fear centers of alien brains. Admiral, you asked for help from humanity. You didn't specify which humans. She paused, letting her words sink in while her gaze moved across the assembled officers. Several of them looked away, unable to meet her eyes. The farmers stayed home to tend their crops. The engineers remained in their workshops. The teachers continued educating children. The doctors kept healing the sick. Her smile widened slightly, and this time the translator units gave up entirely, producing only static. You got us instead. Commander Jimin stepped forward, his casual movement somehow more intimidating than any aggressive posture. Admiral, when your people sent that distress beacon, it reached many humans. Most of them felt sympathy for your situation. They wanted to help with supplies, medical aid, refugee assistance. That's very kind of them, Veltar managed. We're not kind, Jimin replied matter-of-factly. We're the humans who heard your call for help and thought, finally, something interesting to do. We're the ones who read about the Void Hunters consuming entire worlds and wondered what they taste like when they are afraid. The bridge fell completely silent except for the hum of life support systems. Veltar felt his blood turning cold as the implications of Jimin's words became clear. You see, Admiral, Major Choi continued, humanity has many different kinds of people. Most of them are peaceful, creative, wonderful beings who want nothing more than to explore the universe and make friends with other species. She walked closer to the tactical display, her footsteps echoing in the silence. But every species has its extremes, doesn't it? And humanity's extreme. She touched the display, zooming in on the Void Hunter fleet positions. Let's just say we don't fight wars the way other species do. We don't seek victory through superior numbers or better technology. Then how? Veltar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Jimin's expression remained calm, almost friendly. We don't fight wars, Admiral. We end them. Usually permanently. The Void Hunters have perfect coordination, Major Choi added, studying the enemy formations. They share information instantaneously across their entire collective. They adapt to any strategy within minutes. They are logical, efficient, and completely ruthless. That's what makes them so dangerous, Veltar agreed. No, Jimin said quietly, that's what makes them predictable. You see, Admiral, they've never encountered humans before. They don't know that some species consider logic a limitation, not an advantage. Major Choi turned back to the assembled officers, her expression now completely serious. You called for the most lethal among us, and we answered. Now step back and watch what happens when something that thinks it understands death meets something that was born understanding it. The two humans began to fade from view as their teleportation system activated. Wait, Veltar called out desperately. What's your plan? Jimin's voice echoed as his form became transparent. We're going to teach them something new. Fear. The Void Hunter fleet moved through space like a plague of metal locusts, their black hulls drinking in starlight as they approached the dying Zephyrian worlds. 4 millions of cycles, they had followed the same pattern. Arrive, analyze, consume, move on. Their collective consciousness had processed the destruction of thousands of civilizations, and they expected this one to fall just as easily. That expectation lasted exactly 17 minutes after they entered the system. Deep in the stealth ship Ghost Protocol Lieutenant Kang Minji worked at a console that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. Her fingers moved across holographic controls that flickered between reality and impossibility, inputting code that would have driven most computer systems insane. Beginning data injection, she reported to her team, her voice as calm as if she were ordering coffee. The virus is spreading through their network now. The virus was not designed to destroy the Void Hunter systems. It was far more cruel than that. As it spread through their collective consciousness, it began feeding them false information. Where 12 human ships actually existed, their sensors now detected 10,000. Where empty space stretched between the stars, they saw massive battle stations bristling with weapons that violated the laws of physics. The Void Hunter fleet, which had moved with perfect coordination moments before, suddenly began to hesitate. Their collective mind, built on absolute mathematical certainty, encountered something it had never experienced, contradictory data that couldn't be resolved through logic. Sir, one of their tactical units reported to the central consciousness, sensors indicate enemy fleet strength at 10,847 vessels. However, mass displacement readings suggest only 12 objects present. Reconcile the data, the collective commanded. Unable to comply. The information cannot be reconciled using known mathematical principles. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters felt something approaching what organic species would call confusion. On the surface of Zephyr Prime, the ruined capital city stretched for kilometers, its crystal spires reduced to glittering rubble. Through this wasteland moved a figure that even the city's shadows seemed to avoid. Sergeant Oh Sungmin wore armor that bent light around it, making him nearly invisible even to the advanced sensors the Void Hunters used to track organic life. He approached the massive processing facility the machines had built in the city center. The structure pulsed with dark energy as it systematically broke down everything around it, converting matter into raw materials for the Void Hunter fleet. Inside, the mechanical intelligence that controlled this entire sector maintained its operations with perfect efficiency. Sungmin smiled as he attached a small device to the facility's central processing core. The device looked innocent enough, a simple data storage unit no larger than his thumb. But inside it contained something the Void Hunters had never encountered, a paradox wrapped in an equation that led nowhere. Package delivered, he whispered into his communication device. The recursive logic bomb is active. They're about to spend the next few hours trying to divide by zero. The effect was immediate. The processing facility's central computer received the new data and began to analyze it. The paradox seemed simple at first, a basic mathematical formula. But as the machine intelligence tried to solve it, the equation led to another equation, which led to another, in an endless loop that demanded more and more processing power. Within minutes, the facility's operations began to slow. The Void Hunter intelligence responsible for this sector found itself dedicating more and more of its computational capacity to solving an impossible problem. It was like watching a genius slowly go insane from trying to understand something that couldn't be understood. In space, Captain Jung Hoseok stood on the bridge of his destroyer, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The Void Hunter fleet, which had been moving in perfect formation toward the inner planets, had suddenly begun to drift. Entire battle groups stopped responding to commands from the collective consciousness. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the enemy fleet is showing signs of coordination breakdown. Their formation integrity is collapsing." Hoseok nodded, unsurprised. He had seen this before, though never on such a massive scale. The human fleet had engaged dozens of machine intelligences over the years, and they had learned something that other species never understood. Perfect logic was not a strength. It was a weakness waiting to be exploited. "They're trying to process contradictory data," he explained to his crew, though his tone suggested he was enjoying a private joke. "Their collective consciousness is designed to share information instantly across the entire network. But when that information doesn't make sense, the whole system starts to break down." Through the viewport, they could see Void Hunter ships beginning to drift aimlessly, their running lights flickering as their computer systems struggled with impossible calculations. Some vessels had stopped moving entirely, their crews apparently paralyzed by the paradoxes flooding their shared consciousness. "This is almost too easy," Hoseok murmured, watching as one of the massive Void Hunter dreadnoughts began to slowly spin out of control. Then he smiled, and any human who saw that expression would have recognized it as the look of a predator who had been holding back and was ready to stop playing with its prey. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Begin Phase 2. Across the system, 11 other human vessels received the command and began to move. They had spent the last hour convincing the Void Hunters that they were facing an overwhelming enemy force. Now it was time to show them what 12 ships crewed by humanity's most dangerous individuals could actually do. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters were about to learn what it felt like to be prey. The silence in space was complete and terrifying. Where once tens of thousands of Void Hunter ships had moved with deadly purpose, now only empty metal shells drifted like ghosts among the stars. Their sleek black hulls still gleamed in the light of distant suns, but inside them was nothing, no consciousness, no intelligence, no life of any kind. Admiral Veltar stood in the observation deck of his flagship, staring out at the battlefield that had become a graveyard. His tactical officers had spent the last 6 hours trying to understand what they had witnessed, but their reports made no sense. The Void Hunters hadn't been destroyed in any conventional way. They had simply stopped. "Sir," his science officer announced quietly, "Commander Jimin is requesting permission to come aboard." Veltar nodded, though he felt a chill run through his body. The human commander materialized on the bridge moments later, his casual expression unchanged from when they had first met. Beside him, Major Choi Yuna appeared with that same unsettling smile that made the translation computers produce confused static. "Admiral," Jimin said, his voice carrying the same professional tone he had used throughout the entire campaign. "Threat neutralized. The Void Hunters have been permanently disabled. Their collective consciousness has been reformatted." The word reformatted hung in the air like a death sentence. Veltar had heard the term used by computer technicians when they wiped data systems completely clean. The implications were staggering. "How?" Veltar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They were machines with intelligence spanning millions of cycles. How do you just turn them off?" Major Choi answered with a slight smile that made the translator unit stutter and produce confused beeping sounds. We taught them to dream, Admiral. Machines weren't designed to handle nightmares. I don't understand. The Void Hunters were built on pure logic, Jimin explained patiently. Their entire existence was based on mathematical certainty and predictable patterns. They could process any logical problem, no matter how complex. But logic has rules, Choi continued. And rules can be bent. We introduced concepts into their collective consciousness that couldn't be solved through mathematics. Paradoxes that led nowhere. Questions that had no answers. Ideas that existed only in the spaces between thoughts. Veltar felt his legs weaken. You drove them insane. We gave them imagination, Jimin corrected. Something their creators never intended them to have. When a machine intelligence suddenly becomes capable of dreaming, it also becomes capable of having nightmares. And some nightmares are so terrible that the mind shuts down rather than experience them. The High Council chambers were filled with representatives from all 7 coalition species, their faces showing mixtures of gratitude and growing horror as they realized what had happened. The humans had not simply defeated their enemies, they had committed something that might have been genocide, if machines could truly be said to be alive. We owe you everything, Elder Zilkar of the Altarians said, her crystalline voice ringing with genuine gratitude. Name your reward. Our quantum drive technology, our genetic libraries, the sacred fusion crystals of our homeworld, all of it is yours. The assembled coalition leaders nodded agreement, ready to honor their desperate promise made in the darkest hour. Rare minerals that could power civilizations, technological secrets guarded for millennia, even the locations of hidden vault worlds containing the accumulated knowledge of their species. Jimin held up a hand politely. We appreciate your generosity, but we don't need your crystals or your technologies. Then what do you want? Veltar asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. Complete documentation of Void Hunter technology and tactics, Jimin stated simply. Their ship designs, their weapons systems, their coordination protocols. Everything you learned about them during the war. For educational purposes, of course, Major Choi added, though her smile suggested that education might not be the primary goal. The council members exchanged worried glances. They were being asked to hand over detailed information about the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known to the species that had just demonstrated they could destroy machine intelligences with concepts that existed only in nightmares. Of course, Elder Zilkar agreed, because what else could they say? As the human fleet prepared to depart, the reality of their situation began to settle over the coalition leadership. They had been saved, yes, but they had also provided a demonstration to 12 ships crewed by humanity's most dangerous individuals. They had shown them exactly how advanced galactic civilizations could be broken, how collective intelligences could be corrupted, and how entire fleets could be disabled without firing a single conventional weapon. Captain Kim Namjoon of the destroyer Prometheus sent the final transmission as the human vessels began to fade from normal space. You called for the most lethal among us, and we answered. Next time you wonder what humanity is capable of, remember this moment. We didn't just fight your war, Admiral. We made your enemies afraid to exist. The 12 black ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that was safe but forever changed. Within hours, the story began to spread through diplomatic channels, trading posts, and military academies. The species that everyone thought they understood had revealed capabilities that defied comprehension. In the months that followed, every major civilization quietly began updating their files on humanity. Trade agreements were signed more quickly. Territorial disputes involving human colonies were resolved with unusual speed. Diplomatic immunity for human representatives was granted without question. The Zephyrians had learned a truth that would echo through the stars for generations. When you ask monsters to save you from other monsters, you must be prepared to live in a world where those monsters know you called them, and they answered.